Good afternoon. I'm Brad Clements. I'm the Chief Software Architect at NetDocuments. We first became acquainted with the GLBC people a little over a year ago, and over this last year have been doing some technical work, building some proof of concept integrations, and also watching and providing a little input as that organization has grown and matured technically as well as organizationally. And so today we're excited to show you a little of what we've been doing and talk about it. And I'm here together with Peter.
Thanks, Brad. So Peter Buck, VP of Product Strategy with NetDocuments, Simple, Secure Content Services in the Cloud. The point of today, we think, is that documents, business and the law is encoded in documents, and one of our jobs is to help manage that securely. But we also spend a lot of thanks to the GLBC and Integra, because there's really three functions. There's the business question, which many of you are probably asking, why do I use this and how do I use blockchain? There's the technical underpinnings, and there's a regulatory underpinnings. And I think we've made great progress with respect to many of the technical underpinnings. And this Dilbert cartoon, to me, sums it up, which is the business still really doesn't understand how it should be used, and naturally. So one of the things we want to show today is really two bits of transactions. One is a transaction around securing and completing a document as part of a purchase agreement, and the second is securing email and encrypting those. So we think those are practical use cases around this notion that the business and practice of law is encoded in documents. So let me start first, just set the stage a bit. So this is a supply agreement between Contoso Inc., a NetDocuments customer, and Text Extract Inc., a supplier of services to me on an ongoing basis. I happen to be in the corporate law department at Contoso in the ops team. And so my goal is I traditionally establish a multi-year agreement between parties that have amendments that provide new services on an ongoing basis. So my first goal is to establish that relationship. I establish that relationship in a traditional way, and it's going to look very familiar to everybody here. So step one is that I'm a NetDocuments customer. I need to begin to start an agreement. You'll see my list of documents available to me here. Here's the master services agreement that is the part of the relationship. I've created a number of versions of that document, and they're available here. So now I've got a drafted agreement. I need to start the process of executing this agreement. So having done that, I will now attach this document that's been worked on to an email. And that email will be distributed. It's a PDF type A format, so we know that it's got endurance, but it's missing the distributed trust component that we need to support future agreements. One of those agreements is going to be possibly smart contracts that need a definitive ID associated with the business terms. So now I've taken this document, I've sent it, now I've received back the final agreement, and I'm going to place it back into the repository along with the original negotiated agreements. As I do that, I come back to my dashboard. You can see me here. And now I see the list of agreements that are part of this master services term. There's the one at the top, the master services agreement between Contoso and Text Extract Inc. So my last step, this has been everything you should be used to and experience every single day. My last step, though, is to manifest this on the blockchain. Why do I care about that? I care about that because I want to support future transactions, and we'll show you also trying to address the question of which is the definitive agreement. You see a single checkbox there. I'm saying publish this document to the blockchain. I'm going to add a small note, and we think the test has to be as easy as sending and receiving email, and we think that's what we're trying to accomplish here by showing the ability to take that blockchain ID. I'm grabbing that ID for the future, just like you might grab an email address to use in the future. So now I've got the document. You can see we've connected that document now to the blockchain ID. So now all your retention and information governance patterns can start, where that document would be retained for the life of that transaction, while the final agreement is on the blockchain. Now, I find that I'm managing it in the context of Contoso. Now I'm sending that document back to Chris because it's done. It's completed. I've added the blockchain ID, and now I've communicated it back. So Chris and I have the definitive agreement in PDF type A. I have attached that to my content repository. Chris would keep a record of that however he wants. Now remember, each of these can be shared through a URL so that if I want to go back later and look. So the last piece that you're probably asking is, well, fine, a couple years have gone by, what do I do with this bit of content? And so one of the things that we found, there needs to be a helper app. This is an app for Text Extract Inc. that needs to say, 2 years has gone by, I have this master services agreement. Is this really the final agreement that we executed 3 years ago? Because I have amendment number 3 to that. You'll see here that we've taken the document that was the basis for Text Extract Inc. They're managing it as they manage it, not in NetDocuments. We've recorded that blockchain ID. Now, my colleague, Chris, has uploaded that document, and this little helper app has come back and said definitively, this is the same exact document that was signed and finalized 2 years ago. Again, I think you'll see a lot of maturity around these helper apps so that we can make sure that if everybody's not sharing the same content repository, it makes it easy to access it. So that's the workflow. It should look very similar to all the things you work today. You've got communication and versioning that happens. You have emails and documents being shared on emails, final email publishing via electronic signature, and we're simply bringing the glue back to make sure that that can be published to the blockchain and very easily rendering an ID. So this was all built on top of the IBM Hyperledger with the assistance of the Integra APIs, but I thought for the business people in the room, I thought sometimes it's helpful to sort of peel it back a little bit, and so let's look under the hood of what really happened. So I showed you we kept the blockchain ID. That's what's shown on the screen now. The next was this document or digital digest. Everybody's been using the word a hash. Essentially, it's a digital fingerprint that's mathematically generated and impossible to alter. That's been rendered to the blockchain as well. And then finally, a secure link. This is that universal URL that would point back to our repository or the repository of your choice. So now you've got a definitive record. The example I showed you, that happened to be stored on a file system somewhere, but that helper app will make sure that they get connected. And then finally, here's the original PDF agreement in different versions. So the point is a series of layers. Those layers will help accelerate business, and the concept of that business and law is encoded in documents, we want to make it as easy as possible to accomplish that. So just to connect it back to the global legal blockchain before I turn it over to Brad, is that we think there's really these 4 major groups, right? There's a set of governance and standards that are emerging. The GLBC, Accord Project, many others are trying to establish those to make it easy for business to achieve the goals that you want. Simplify business transactions, make sure that they're reduced risk and faster. Then there's a set of APIs. We believe that some notion of permission blockchain where parties trust each other is more relevant. And then there's the blockchain storage. That happens to be Hyperledger. We don't believe that the full document payloads belong on the blockchain. Hashes of those with references is the appropriate model. So that's just a quick tour of one approach to say, how can we accelerate business through blockchain? I'm going to turn over to Brad to walk us through the next example.
Thanks, Peter. So the second example we want to show you is, again, 2 parties involved here who want to exchange a document, but they want to do it in a secure way. And as you all know, exchanging keys for encryption and using existing email solutions today, it's a difficult proposition, especially when you're going across organizations. We want to make that, when I say we, I'm saying NetDocuments together with Integra and our partners, we want to make that as easy as a couple of additional clicks. So what we're going to show you here is a way to use the blockchain as a key exchange that will facilitate encrypted email. So, whoops, I went too far there. Let me back up.
Start automatically.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Not seeing my video starting. So what you're seeing first, this is the point of view of a user who wants to start this process. And so with a single click here, he's clicking this register a key to use for blockchain encryption. What happens when he does that, and I'm going to pause there for a moment, that's generating a public-private key pair and storing the private key with this user's account, in this case. It's storing the public key out on a blockchain where it can be accessible to not only this user and his application, but by multiple applications. So now we're going to switch to the point of view of of the person who wants to send an email to this user. So he's coming in here, he's going to enter in an email address for this person. The application is doing a lookup out on the blockchain and finding that that email address has been associated with a public key out on the blockchain. And so it showed this checkbox saying encrypt the attachments. So he's going to go ahead and choose that option, enter in a little message. And now my application, as it sends the email, is going to use the public key that it found on the blockchain for this email address to encrypt that attachment. Okay, now we're seeing the point of view of the recipient of that email. And you'll notice that the attachment, it was an Excel document that was sent, but it didn't come through as an XLSX attachment because it's encrypted. It can't be opened by Excel itself, not directly. So it's got a different extension here. So I'm going to save it down to my desktop. And obviously this is just a point of, or a proof of concept that the UI could be vastly improved over time. I'm just proving here that it actually was encrypted. You see right in the first few bytes there's some potentially interesting looking information, but everything else is just gibberish. It's just encrypted data. You can't gather any meaning out of that. Anyone who had intercepted that email on its way would see only that. But this user now, as he clicked on the attachment, and that went very quickly, but you might have seen it launched a little helper application that logged into his NetDocuments account, retrieved his private key, used that to decrypt that encrypted attachment, and then rendered it into the plain text Excel document, which was then opened. So what you've seen here is the ability with just a couple of clicks to register a key, a public-private key pair on the blockchain, use the blockchain then as a way to look up that key, use that key to encrypt email or encrypt attachments to an email in a way that only the intended recipient can decrypt it because only the intended recipient has access to the corresponding private key. And I don't know if we have time for any questions now, or should we wait till after?
You were so efficient. We actually have a couple of minutes for questions, so we'll do that and stick to the time schedule. But if there are questions from the audience, we can take a couple right now.
All right. Go ahead.
Would you just repeat the question?
So I believe the question was, do I have to do this separately for every email system I'm using? For the sender, yeah. So in this case, the sender was not actually registering a key. He was looking up a key that the recipient, the intended recipient, had previously registered.
I think before he did that, he identified the document. There was a checkbox that said generate public-private key pair for the sender.
Yeah, I should have separated those three phases a little better. The first phase where you saw that checkbox that said register a key, that was actually the recipient's point of view. And so the recipient would do that once. Then I switched to the sender's point of view, and the sender didn't actually register a key, but he entered that email address, and then a lookup happened against the blockchain, found the recipient's key, and pulled that back to do the encryption.
We would like to see the Integra Ledger being used as a key registry. We proposed this out to a number of people. Brad was the first to jump on the concept and go, this really works well. So we would like to see pretty much everyone have a public key registered, and then consumers like NetDocuments would be able to integrate it into their systems.
And it does need to be said that this is a proof of concept. There are some missing pieces there, and if you attend the third blockchain session at ILTACon that Jay mentioned will be on Wednesday afternoon, we'll talk a little bit about what are some of the missing pieces there that we're hoping the GLBC and other organizations can fill to really make this a complete solution. Question in the back? Yeah,
Just
do you wanna-
repeat the question, or
Okay.
Couldn't hear the question.
Yeah, the question had to do with signature pages on documents. They're so tedious today. You know, you prepare a document, you send it to someone, they print it out, they handwrite a signature, they scan it back in, they send it. There's a lot of tedium involved there. And can that be automated? Can that be made easier?
Can
And-
I have a minute, Jay?
Go ahead.
Absolutely. There are many solutions people are working on. Integra is proposing a solution called Smart Documents. So we have this idea of attaching digital signatures, registering them on the blockchain, and actually attaching them to digital files that you can embed in documents, for example, generated and managed by NetDocuments. We have a lot of stuff where the Contract Express demo that you'll be seeing in a few minutes touches on some of this possibly. But yes, we believe that you can create digital signatures attached to something a little bit more complicated called self-sovereign identity. So not only will you have your own signature, but you'll be able to use it to control releasing your own information, so that Equifax or someone doesn't have to have all of the information. You own the information, and you digitally sign a release, or someone asks for it with their digital signature. So there are a lot of technologies that are a little bit too complicated, but grab someone from Integra, especially me, and we'd be happy to talk about it.
We've written a short white paper on that topic, business blockchain, sort of repudiation and agreement about how that can accelerate the PDF process today. So if you want to see me afterwards, happy to give you a pre-release copy of that. But I think over time with Vermont law and other legal and regulatory findings, you will see that PDF wet ink or digital inks being eclipsed with blockchain identities.
Yeah, so it's called
Repeat the question.
So there's a concept called self-sovereign identity, and there's a blockchain called the Sovereign Blockchain, and their code is actually, they donated code to Hyperledger, so there's something in Hyperledger called Project Indy, which we're experimenting with blending with the Integra Ledger, and there are about 35 or so other major players in the identity space. And again, if you look up self-sovereign identity, you know, this is so interesting. Can I talk 1 minute on this? So pretend you and I are having a roommate agreement. You know, I can't afford the San Francisco rent anymore. So old school, I would put out a Craigslist listing, and you might respond, and I don't know you, but I want to know that you have at least $100,000 in your bank account and that you're earning at least $20,000 a month. So I would normally have asked you for your ADP check stub and your Wells Fargo bank statement. Well, you don't really want to share all that information from me. You don't want me to know you make the minimum, or you're making $1 million a year at Google. So what you end up doing is focusing on just the question at hand. It's just, do you have this much money, and are you employed? But you don't want to provide any other information. So basically, everyone has an identity on the sovereign blockchain, and this would be tied to Integra. And then third parties like Wells Fargo would be trusted to make claims. So basically, and they have digital keys. So basically, I would throw out a request with my digital signature to you. It gets routed to Wells Fargo and ADP. They simply confirm the answer. Do you have the balance? Are you making that amount? Digitally sign that, and that gets routed. So I can do a confirmation, or you can do a confirmation if you're in of a claim, but not necessarily share the details. That's take a look at self-sovereign identity. Google it. They'll explain it better than I just did. I kind of botched that one.
That's an appetizer. Peter and Brad, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.